Okay, right. Let's see what we've got. An interesting one we're going to demo with today. So I'm wondering what we're going to do. We're going photo paper for this one. Oh, hear that? There's that low-pitched squeak. It's bloody annoying. It's amazing how this machine has had very little use compared to what it should be used. Its recommended monthly duty cycle is it's 10,000 copies, and this machine has done probably about only a maximum of 1,000 copies a month. So it's way below the duty cycle rating for this piece of shit. So it's not good. It's not a good reflection on Konica Minolta. Listen to it. Oh, it's gone now. Okay. It's very distracting having all these noises and all these sounds that just seem to be appearing. We're just going to cut that. We're going to make this this is a really nice little something happening. I bought it at a cheap shop, and it's about something that I actually hate. Even though it's very attractive. It's a very attractive looking thing, but it's usually associated with something I really, 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 really hate. Okay, something that is celebrated yearly, and I have no fucking interest in it, except these things look quite nice, actually, very pretty. It's very posh. It's a posh event, so I have a hatred for it. But yeah, this is no other than a Melbourne Cup Facinator. So it's called a Facinator, and I guess it's pretty obvious. It does look pretty fascinating, if we must be a little bit on the corny side. But basically, they call them a Facinator. Well, that's what the Australians call it anyway. I don't know what other countries refer to these as. I'm going to try and make this look really, look good, look fascinating. I wanted to capture that netting as well, so I'm just going to work out how to make this feather's going to sort of support it on an angle to make it look good, more fascinating, haha. But yeah, I don't like Melbourne Cup Day, and it's pretty obvious. You know I don't like money fucking and people who are associated with money fucking, including companies like, Konica Minolta, who made this piece of shit. But basically Melbourne Cup Day, as you probably guessed, is a celebration of horse racing. And horse racing, of course, is money fucking because it's gambling. It celebrates a thing that people do that is not healthy for your mental health, your emotional health, or not to mention, it's not healthy for your soul. I'm trying to decide how big to make this, but basically it's all about gambling. It's all about posh culture. Even though this is posh, it still looks quite nice. But I'm against that kind of culture. It's all about rich people. It's all about glitz and glamour, and that's what a Facinator is basically about. It's basically something bog standard that people wear to the Melbourne Cup Day, or maybe other races, I'm pretty sure. I got it from a cheap shop, so it was cheap. It was made in China by really diligent, poor little slaves, because for this to be cheap, the labour has to be cheap. And I've got to take my hat off to the little Chinese people who make this stuff, who slave over it. But that looks quite nice. It's a bit blah blah. It's not as brightly yellow, but I like the composition. So I'm thinking we're just going to make some more little adjustments to make this look better. But basically, for us to have nice looking products, or products that are of good quality, there has to be a sacrifice when they're cheap, and that is the little Chinese workers who work so fucking hard trying to satisfy our demand, like for Apple products and shit like that, electronics, including this photocopier, most of it's made in China as well, so it's not fair on them. And I just feel bad but I can't afford to buy things, but there's not much made in Australia anyway. It's like everything's made in China and everything's made cheap. But Of course, electronics are still expensive, but basically it'd be nice if these Chinese people could be paid better pay. But anyway, that looks much the same. It looks a little bit more yellow than the first. I do like the pastel look in some ways. It looks, and I see the details come out, but I wish it was more bright. I wish it was a brighter sort of yellow. So I wonder if maybe we're going to again crank up the contrast. But basically, I just feel sorry for those poor little doers. They just do their job, and they just work so fucking hard for us. What can I say? What can I do? I have to use that because I'm on a tight budget myself, and it's very difficult avoiding using slave labour. What can we do, Let's see how we go with this. But they've done a very good job putting it together. Apparently in the old days, when Chinese were first being exploited for cheap labour by the big rich white countries like Australia and US and that shit, I don't know about the US, but with Australia, apparently it used to be shitty product. Made in China usually meant like it was rubbish, but they really know now how to do it really well, how to put on make up a really good product with the kind of slave labour that they're pushed into. It's amazing how they make this shit, and how they work so hard and don't get much pay. I mean, it's just incredible. We're just going all the way with the contrast. And maybe I was thinking of putting it down, but it would make it too dark. But yeah, you got to admire these little doers. They really do hard work. They're just hungry, but it's even happening in Australia too. Even Australian workers are being treated like shit. Like, I read an article on Facebook about Amazon. I think it was somewhere in Melbourne. They have a huge picking and packing factory and delivery facility. Now that looks a lot better. They have a huge delivery facility. I think it's in Melbourne somewhere. And hey, it's not just Chinese and other migrant workers, although there are a lot of migrant workers at this facility. But basically, even Australians, or whatever Australians go there to work, are being exploited. They're being treated like they have to pick and pack things from a huge warehouse, and if they don't do their picking and packing within a certain time frame, and it shows on their scanner how much time they've got till they get in trouble, essentially, for not doing it fast enough. And basically these poor workers are paid, they're casualised workers. The stupid Amazon, the stupid rich fuck who runs Amazon is a real asshole. You can tell by how he runs his facilities, like in Melbourne, what I was saying. And these poor little workers are being... They always seem to be threatened by the prospect of losing their job if they don't make all the quotas. And they got to keep running around the workshop, around the, whatever it's called, the factory. Well, it's not quite a factory, it's just a warehouse. I think a warehouse is a better word for it. And they're just always running around. They're too worried some of them are too worried to take a toilet break outside the normal break time, and it's horrible. And they don't get sick pay, they don't get holiday pay, they're just casual. It's all casualised shit. And it's in Australia, so don't think it's just China or third world countries. It's in our fucking country too, and our fucking people. Our people are normally used to being paid a fair wage, whereas the Chinese have gotten used to being treated like fucking slaves. But either way, whether it happens in China or happens in our own land, we don't want it. But how do we stop this bullshit? How do we make things fair again? How do we bring our manufacturing back onto our shores, so that we can have more factory jobs? Build our own stuff instead of having to rely on slave labour overseas to do it. China's not the only country, but basically with this photocopier, the actual copier is made in China, and the base, I think it's this part, is made in Vietnam, if I remember correctly. But enough about that, but you get my drift. This world's becoming increasingly unfair. Also that rich people can have their fucking lurks and perks, and that will probably include, hey, Melbourne Cup Day.